And now I'm delighted to introduce our Secretary of State, the political head of the Department for Business, Innovation and Skills, the Right Honourable Dr. Vincent Cable. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and a warm welcome from me on behalf of the government to WorldSkills, which is a really remarkable, actually inspirational event. Delighted to be here. And I'm particularly delighted for it to be in London. I mean, not simply because we're the host, but because of the messages which it sends to my own country. Through their talent and endeavour, we've got roughly 1,000 competitors here, 50 countries, setting an example and sending a very powerful message that skills are a source of pride and self-worth, as well as a basis for their own career success and financial security. Now, we in the UK are, like many of the other countries represented here, are trying to recover from a very deep economic crisis and recession. We're also in London trying to address the social problems that contributed to the riots that we had here in the summer. And skills offer a solution to both challenges. They're essential to economic growth, as my permanent secretary has just set out, but they're just as necessary for social inclusion. Now, the government I represent, the coalition government's been in power now for just over a year, and I want to highlight some of the ways in which we're trying to shape the skills agenda. But let me start with this point. My point of departure is that, of course, we have very high hopes for the British team in this event. I'm sure and I hope they have a very large haul of medals. But the brutal truth is that this competition won't provide a very accurate representation of the skills base in the country. Because the reality is that compared with a lot of countries, we have a large number of people with low qualifications. We do indeed perform pretty well at the graduate level, including science, technology, engineering and maths, but we are 19th out of 34 in the OECD in terms of skills above GCSE level. And in the table of European Union countries ranked in order of hours of training per individual trainees, one of the basic metrics, we're actually bottom. And I think it's best to be honest with ourselves from the outset about these failings, because that then provides a benchmark of how we should improve if we're going to overcome the productivity gap between the UK and other leading industrial countries. Because at the moment, we don't have a fully internationally competitive skills base, and that in turn defines our ambition, which is to be amongst the world's leaders within the next decade. And the government's actions and policies have to be understood against that objective. And the task we face concretely is to produce hundreds of thousands of more young people whose skills merit comparison with those of the UK team at the skills at the competition here. Now, the most visible and tangible policy we're implementing is to increase dramatically the number of apprenticeships. We're creating the biggest apprenticeship program the UK has seen in modern times, and this reflects the preferences, which are becoming very clear, of young people who wish to do this, and also of employers. And I think Sir Robin Wales' comments in his introduction about the need for employer demand is absolutely critical. As the Permanent Secretary said a few moments ago, apprenticeships are not the only mechanism, but they are the most universally recognised method of gold standard training. And it's no accident that 2/3 of the UK's team is made up of former apprentices. And we know several very specific things about apprenticeships. First of all, that apprentices help their employers to boost productivity. There is clear evidence to that effect. Secondly, that employers very quickly recoup their investment typically within 3 years, and that every pound of public investment in apprenticeships generates, we estimate, something of the order of £40 for the wider economy. So that's why we made a specific decision a year ago, when we were faced with very tough decisions on public spending priorities, to support and deliver at least 250,000 more apprenticeships than were planned over the next 4-year period. So that's a minimum of 250,000 more in England alone. And the emphasis is on advanced apprenticeships in sectors of the economy where we have the potential to gain a competitive advantage. I mean, what essentially we're doing is trying to revive a technician class within our own workforce in order to increase our capability in engineering and manufacturing in particular. And we're targeting support at small and medium-sized enterprises who employ, as it happens, proportionately larger numbers of apprentices compared with large employers, but often find it difficult to set up and finance apprenticeship schemes and often fear that their trainees are poached. Now, the early signs of this initiative are very positive. Indeed, I came into the hall this morning, met a couple of college principals who told me that their apprenticeship demand is soaring, literally within the last few months. And provisional data showing that we exceeded our target for 2010-11 of more than 200,000 apprenticeship starts for 19-year-olds and over. But absolute numbers are only one measure. Of course, quality is important as well as quantity. And in tandem with extra investment, we're making a real effort across the skills sector to reduce the bureaucracy that FE colleges in particular and other training providers have had to contend with for far too long. We believe that colleges need the freedom to serve the best interests of their students and employers. We're therefore abolishing centrally imposed targets on colleges. We're streamlining contract and funding processes. We're simplifying quality assurance and assessment of provision. And altogether, it represents a different kind of relationship between government and trainers. It's less heavy-handed, more trusting, enabling colleges and other training providers to respond swiftly to demands from industry. And on this front, the government has created a fund to encourage businesses to come together to identify and invest the skills that they need. And this is the Growth and Innovation Fund, worth up to 50 million annually. And it's there to provide concentrated seed funding for employer-led projects that attract further co-financing from business. And I can confirm today that projects are now in place for a range of sectors following the first round of applications to this fund. And in this first wave, we'll be injecting over £10 million alongside a comparable investment from employers. In fact, just give a few examples. Renewable UK, which is the sector trade association, is leading a project to establish a trading network in renewable energy. And it brings together employers, colleges, universities, and others. And after a 2-year period of pump priming, this network will be self-financing from 2013. Amongst the other successful bids have been an academy for healthcare, another for creative industries, for science-based industries, and, for example, a project developing training within the manufacturing supply chain of the nuclear power industry. Now, I hope this project and others will spur more sectors to come up with creative ideas when we invite a second round of applications later this year. But I don't want to give the impression that we've adopted a strictly utilitarian approach to skills and learning. Before I became a government minister, I was quite closely involved in supporting the Adult Community College in my own parliamentary constituency, which does absolutely wonderful work with adults in performing arts. I have the model of my own mother, who left school at 15 to work in a factory and then discovered the arts through adult education and was lifted up and inspired by it. And there are many people who have experiences of that kind. and who've learned to appreciate that learning in all its forms is good for our well-being. But what I've seen of WorldSkills so far only confirms what I've seen up and down the country. I spend a lot of time trying to get out on regional visits, looking at colleges, universities, and companies, and within recent weeks, been to see the engineering apprentices at Rolls-Royce in Derby, opened a new academy, then met veterinary science students at Solihull College, going through to degree level training, and indeed people doing dance and photography at my local college in the borough of Richmond. The process of learning new skills produces not just qualifications, but it produces confidence, optimism, a sense of purpose amongst young and old alike. And it was important, I think, for those reasons that we in the coalition government took the decision last year to safeguard the adult learning budget in the lifetime of this Parliament. And we're currently reviewing how best to apportion this money, working with the likes of the Open University, the BBC and the British Library on providing more resources for adults online. And as an additional measure for developing inclusion, we've recently created a new ladder to apprenticeships to widen access for young people who require extra support before they embark on apprenticeship training. It's workplace-based and it gives people aged 16 to 24 without the necessary qualifications or experience on their CVs an opportunity to convince prospective employers of their aptitude and employability. And the Access to Apprenticeship scheme will help up to 10,000 people this academic year, with similar numbers in future years. Now, these are young people who may hopefully be inspired by skills competitions like this one. Indeed, the greatest legacy that we want to see from WorldSkills is a UK-wide increase in esteem and participation in vocational skills. I think we've for far too long had this idea of some kind of caste system that people do academic work and it's up here and vocational training is down there. We must get rid of that and we must establish real esteem and pride associated with vocational training, apprenticeships in particular. So this is only the beginning. We're working with the private sector on various employer-led schemes, the establishment of new professional standards, occupational licensing, and the introduction of voluntary training levies. Professional occupation standards don't just provide quality assurance to the customer and signal the prestige of certain careers within the labour market, they also support more effective and less intrusive regulation in many sectors, but also ensure that the workforce is up to scratch. And training levies, like those already in operation in construction, boost the skills base, including smaller businesses which are exempt for reasons of scale, but who are nonetheless entitled to funding to improve the capability of their staff. Now, these are the schemes which the Growth and Innovation Fund is there for, to help them get off the ground. And in the first round of bids, there are a couple of very good examples of levy schemes, one in the energy sector, and there are a couple of occupational licensing schemes, one in hospitality, the other in employment services. Now, elsewhere, we're determined to improve progression routes from apprenticeships to higher level qualifications, such as university degrees. We've proposed loans to help adults afford advanced level further education. And just as with our reforms to the university system, we're trying to put purchasing power directly in the hands of students. Now, as I've said, we want all employers in their respective sectors to take greater ownership of the task of raising skills to achieve sustainable growth. And I'm discussing with the UK Commission for Employment and Skills what would happen if government really got out of the way and leaving them, the employers, the trade unions and the education sector to drive the vocational skills agenda. Now, in all of this, we're applying a couple of fundamental principles, and it's with those that I will conclude. The first is that the vocational route to individual success and fulfillment is just as legitimate as the academic. Snobbery isn't just tiresome, it is completely self-defeating. And the second is that we want UK prosperity to be built on high-quality products and services made and delivered by an able and motivated workforce. Investment in skills, therefore, represents an investment in the UK in the long term and from the bottom up. So thank you for listening. I'm afraid I now have to leave very quickly to embark on the tour of the exhibition. But I just hope very much that you'll enjoy the rest of the competition. And thank you again for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.